Hey everyone, this is Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
I'm tired.
The beginning part is the one where you say your name, Victoria.
No, it's not.
And you're watching episode 98 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. What are we talking about today?
Boats and people.
What else?
Gunboats.
And?
Great expectations.
There you
You're
go.
the way to occur.
There you go. So, no news from the top. Boat People, Part 2, Episode 796, written by Phil Waller. What happens, Victoria?
You said you'd do the description.
I know. I just wanted to ask you so you could force it off onto me on camera.
Jerry!
Yes, Jerry appears.
And I want to take this moment to once again commend AIOO on how good they are at getting voice actors that sound like exactly like the old ones. Like the guy who they got to play Jerry sounded exactly like the guy from Memories of Jerry. It might have been the same guy.
Oh, I thought you were confirming that it wasn't. That's why I have to make research before you say things, Victoria.
Fine.
Lesson learned. That's the important thing at the end of the day, right, kids?
I want to talk to you.
So, in this episode, we hear the continuation of Ricky Chang's story about his family, and also Whit talks a lot more and reminisces about his past when he was an awful person with Renee D. Carter.
We have Jim
Custer?
Jim Custer in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I love him.
Yeah, we actually saw young Whit, surprisingly.
And it was like young Whit doing his old Whit voice, which he also does in Great Expectations. So these are actually a really good match for each other.
Close enough. Yeah, so we hear that pirates come, and then the pirates leave when the Navy shows up, the Malaysian Navy, and then the Malaysian Navy takes them away, takes them a distance. And then after a while, they're like, oh, by the way, the government just told us we can't let you guys in Malaysia, so we're just going to cut you loose, let you float in the sea. And they do that until they're almost starved, and then the Sea Sweep, which belongs to World Vision, shows up, and it rescues everyone, and then happily ever after. We also find out from Whit that we find out how Jerry died.
Yep. That scene almost made me cry, which wasn't good because I was listening to it at work.
You do that a lot.
And that's because I have 6 hours of doing crafts and such. So what else am I going to do?
So yeah, Jerry died taking a bullet for Grandma. What's her name? I forgot now.
She has like a crush on him. That was really weird.
Yeah.
That was
See,
really
I told
weird.
you it's gonna be romance.
I don't approve. It's my no TP.
So yeah, she's like, oh, my rice farm, and then Jerry's like, no, and then he gets shot to death. And it turns out,
it was really sad.
the grandma was really eyeing up his jewelry, so when he dies, she just Thénardier's the situation.
Yeah.
And
what the heck?
Takes his ring.
To be fair though, they took his body away after he died.
Yeah, they explained it.
And then she found the ring like on the ground because it was blown off because
she
Jerry
tried
had it
to
on
give
a
it
chain
back
because it was too big. Oh, also I was right in that Whit had his ring personalized.
Yes, you were.
So, points for me.
Yep. She tried to return the ring, but couldn't, and so she kept it, and then they're on the boat, and they're floating, and then, she prays to Jesus, because she's tried praying to everyone else, going down her checklist, and she gets to Jesus, and then Kazoom, the Sea Sweep, shows up and rescues them. And then Whit confesses how, way back when, by pure, not coincidence, of course, World Vision, in the form of Bob Smithhauser, or sorry, no, it wasn't Bob in that part. It was Bob on the boat. But World Vision, comes to him, and they're like, hey, we need money for the Sea Sweep. And Whit's like, no, I don't want you to rescue the Vietnamese because they killed my son. And they're like, oh, okay, Mr. Scrooge. And so they go, but they funded the Sea Sweep anyways, and now Whit feels really guilty because he tried to kill a bunch of people, including the people that his son gave his life for, and then it's like, oh, Jerry would have died for nothing.
Did he honestly think they wouldn't raise the money otherwise without his contribution?
I don't know. Either way, if the Sea Sweep hadn't been funded, Jerry would have died for nothing. But they did anyways, despite Whit's help, so he feels super guilty, and then he goes and he prays with Ricky's family, and they're like, we forgive you, and also we dreamed about you 40 years ago.
And they're like, by the way, you're not going to hell. And Whit's like, whoo, that's good to know. And I was like, is that a thing you were
He's like, excuse me, the death program already answered that question for me.
I was like, you've literally already been to kind of
not
heaven.
only did it send me to heaven, not only did it show me what heaven would be like, but it actually sent me there.
So
technology.
I didn't need that confirmation, but thanks anyway.
So
yeah. Honestly, I don't think this part 2 was as good as part 1. Also,
Victoria's
she's
been
like,
ragging on it.
I've been ragging on part 2. The grandma was like, oh, this precious jewelry that was Jerry's, gotta respect it. Shove it in my grandchild's diaper.
No, we'll get there. So
she could have just, like, put it in her shoe or something. That's what I would have done.
You don't think they might not
and
have
then
checked
at the
that?
end, like, Whit tells them everything.
You don't think that's what everyone else does when pirates come? Stick it in their shoe?
Swallow it. And then...
yeah, that won't corrode.
Spit it back up after. But yeah, and then they tell Whit all of this, and then they're like, do you want it back? And even if I was in Whit's position, I'd be like, heck no, I don't want that crap back. Why would I want that back? What's wrong with you people?
This is old and sentimental, Victoria.
No, it's not worth it.
One day you'll understand.
No, I hope not.
One day you'll want the diaper ring.
No, I never will. That was awful. I didn't like part 2 as much as I like part 1. The only...
Do you think that's why the old lady in Titanic threw her into the ocean?
You mean her necklace?
She thinks back to the scene where Leo DiCaprio put it in his pants to hide it from the Gestapo, and so she throws
She's
it
like,
into
I
the
don't
ocean.
want this. Honestly, the only 2 scenes that I liked in part 2 were the one with Jerry and the one with young Whit, and then kind of the last one where Whit's talking to the family. Other than that, I was just kind of like, no.
So
part 1 was so much better.
So we hear Jerry die, which was like, wow, I figured we'd find out how he died. I didn't think we would actually hear the scene, although technically they're like, he was alive until he got back to the base and he died there, but I mean, he was basically dead there, and we heard it happen.
He was like, my ring, and they're like, he's delirious, take him away, and he was like, no!
Isildur, no.
Destroy it!
So, yeah, like we said, they did clarify after the fact. Ricky's great-grandmother just found the ring later on, but they really did make it sound like she Thenardier'd the situation. She was like, ooh, dead soldier, I'm going to pick his pockets.
And then she runs through the sewers.
Yeah. Literally Thenardier, yeah.
Yeah.
And
then later, Whit sees this, and he's like, I know this ring.
Yeah.
This is mine.
What could it be?
You can sing the part. You were Marius.
I was Marius.
Fun fact. Everyone hated Devin the entire time. And we went in production for like a year and a half, and everyone was just constantly mad at Devin, including me.
They didn't hate me. They hated Marius and everything
And
I stood
you were
for.
Marius.
So, yeah, I really love the grandma. She's the best character in this.
No, I don't like her.
All right.
Fight me.
When they're on the pirate ship and she's telling the pirates off, which is what the album art is. I'll throw it up here. I really love that. I also like how she took, even though obviously they've never read the Bible or know any of that stuff, I love how she took almost an identical unintentional cue from Rachel when Laban came for his idols, when Rachel sat on them when she was on her period so that he wouldn't find them by sticking them in the diaper.
That's what... Okay.
As I was writing this, I was like, I wonder if Victoria's never got that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought she meant she was sick.
She was on her period, and she sat on the idols, and that's why she's like, my dad won't make me get up and search for them.
Oh. Okay.
The more you know.
Let's talk about something else.
This is what happens when you read your Bible, Victoria.
I doubt they literally said those words.
Yeah, you doubt because you don't know because you haven't read it.
I'm Judas the Doubter, because that's what his nickname is.
It's not.
I've totally read my Bible.
That is not it. No. Also, the story's in Genesis.
Doubting Judas.
The story's in Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible.
And then Jesus is like, Judas, you doubt me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mom, she has a miscarriage on the boat from the pirates and the ruffian.
You doubted me sick 3 times and the rooster crowed. Just combine all 3 of them.
Which was really sad.
Fun, loving, precocious disciple. It
was really sad because dead babies. Yeah.
That part made me sad.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria.
Yeah.
On a less sad note, and this ended
that
up...
was a quick transition.
And ended up being incredible foresight. When Ricky said, like, the exact phrasing he used when he's like, they were left, stranded in the middle of the ocean, dead in the water. I was like, anyone want pork rinds?
I was like, dead in the water.
It ended up...
For those who have seen Legally Blonde, the musical, except for the line, it's actually a shark in the water.
That ended up being incredible foreshadowing. Because, one more point before we get to that, I really liked how when the grandma was praying, we finally actually got to hear someone speaking Vietnamese in this episode, which hadn't happened yet. So after I make the joke about Aloha Oi, the C-suite pulls up and was like, ahoy! And I was like, ahoy, off the minnow, this is the U.S. Navy. And then it was actually Bob Smithhauser doing the voice. I was like, what a great reference that I made before I even knew it was going to happen. And that's exactly what they did. They brought him back to do the same role again.
It was the same guy?
Yes. Yeah.
He's like, this is my son. He lives in Hawaii.
It was great. It was a great reference. Because I literally, as he said ahoy, like, it was only one word, so you couldn't recognize his voice yet. And I was like, ahoy, off the minnow. And then he's like, this is whatever my name is, of the C-suite. And I'm like, this is literally the same line, and it's Bob Smithhauser. I love this.
Do you think it was like they had to fill in the blanks and they just took the
they just mad. That's how all writing for Adventures and Odyssey is done by Mad Libs.
They just got Bob to say like the 2 different words, and then they just put them
just
in.
Edited it
and
in.
Can you imagine if like they didn't do a good job editing?
If you listen really closely,
like,
you can hear.
Ahoy, Arthur! C-suite.
I was going to say, if you listen really closely, you can hear Doris Rathbone in the background. That's actually where Doris Veneropoli was during the Vietnam War, was floating in the South China Sea.
Just on a floaty. She's like, anyone want pork rinds?
Yeah, she's offering refreshments to the boat people as they immigrate.
They would take them, though.
I'm sure they would.
They would be very hungry.
They would. So we get to hear some old UPF stuff, which kind of answers our question from last time as we were talking about UPF in the past.
Yeah, also, I listened to Silent Night, and I just want to make this comment because we were talking about, like, we don't know when Whit had certain amounts of money. Mm-hmm. And I was saying I think he was richer at one point in his life, and I think that was right before Jerry died, like I said before. I think I'm right, because he obviously has money in this, because he's opened UPF. Mm-hmm. And then in Silent Night, in the part where they're listening to the clip right after Jerry died, he, like, was kind of scraping for money every year before that. But in this one, he's like, here's a new toolkit, Jason. There's Jerry's violin. And I can't remember. He got
yeah, such an expensive gift to re-gift you your brother's stuff.
But...
yeah, I don't remember if it was on the podcast or not that we were...
I think it was on the podcast.
No, we wondered that, but when we were wondering, when did it happen, the part in Tales of Moderation where it talks about... He's like, I lived quite extravagantly at one time in my life. And you were like, I wonder when that was.
Pretty sure that was part 1 of the boat people when you were talking about that.
Okay, I couldn't remember. But yeah, I was like, I have no idea. So yeah, we know that UPF existed, like we said before, at the... it existed at the time that Whit was collecting the samples and memories of Jerry. The turn of the tide.
Water joke. Boats.
The UPF, it was around during Memories of Jerry because they were collecting samples. And that was shortly before Jerry left for the war, which obviously wasn't long before he died, which is when this episode is happening. And, I mean, the C-sweep thing happened probably well after, or shortly after, whenever. It happened probably after Jerry died. So UPF definitely would have been around, so that makes sense. So, that does mean that, you know, not much. We know... encyclopedia from the one episode, and then after it we're like, oh hey, UPF is a thing. I guess it doesn't really answer that much, per se.
I wasn't listening. I was just thinking about the phrase, we're here to burgle your turts the entire time.
What it means is that when UPF existed, shortly before UPF existed, Whit was in the process of writing the encyclopedia, so that probably came first, is the point. And yeah, they got Jim Custer to do the voice, like you said.
I called that.
Which answered your question from last time about whether or not they would use Whit's voice during the time period of Memories of Jerry. Because this happens just after that. And this ties perfectly into our recent analyses about the different ways that Whit lashes out at people when he's hurting over loved ones, like after Jenny died.
Wait a second. We should have known that they would use Jim Custer's voice in Memories of Jerry if he showed up because of Silent Night.
It's true.
Okay, that's on us.
So yeah, I mean, we were talking about in Recollections and Clara about how one of Whit's character flaws is when someone that he loves...
for now, it doesn't line up because Jim Custer does the old Whit voice at this time period, and Memories of Jerry, he has like...
He doesn't have a voice.
Still, yeah, or no, I meant in Silent Night, right after Jerry dies, he has like his normal voice, and he doesn't have like his old Whit Jim Custer voice. Do you think like one day he just like ate some sandpaper accidentally?
Is that what you think Paul Hurlinger's voice sounds like?
He's trying to sound...
Oh,
like...
you mean Jim Custer?
Yeah, Jim Custer.
Oh.
What do you think I'm talking
I thought you meant
about?
at one point in Whit's timeline, that's how his voice suddenly goes from Jim Custer to Paul Hurlinger. Because he ate sandpaper.
Jim Custer is trying to sound like Andre Stoica.
Or Hal Smith.
I think he sounds more like Andre.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so for the third time, like I was saying...
You're welcome.
When something bad happens to his loved ones, Whit lashes out really harshly at the people around him. Yeah. When he lost Clara, when he lost Jenny, when he lost Jerry.
When he lost Jack. Oh wait, no, that was the complete opposite.
He lashed out at an entire country. I was shocked, but the fact that he didn't fund the C-sweep, like, what I expected to happen was he was going to be like, oh, I feel guilt-ridden later. Excuse me, I'm going to call them back. I'll give them the money now. I've seen the error of my ways, and that will fund the trip, and then they'll get to go. But they're like, no. I said no, and that's what happened. I didn't give him any money. I was very surprised.
You like hired hitmen or something like that to try and sink this.
I don't think that's what happened.
It was too big.
Whit is the mob boss of Chicago, as we're all aware. Yes. Shout out to forever ago. It reminded me very much of Jonah. This very much like they're from Nineveh. They don't deserve God's mercy for the things that they've done. So why should I help them?
Like tree grew over Whit, and Whit's like, a tree, I have shade, and Jenny's like, what are you talking about? You're inside.
And he's like, my mother was a caterpillar, my father was a worm, but I'm okay with that now. I can't believe that after everything that they gave us in the Journal of John Avery Whittaker in January, the crew also gave us how Jerry died and more Whit backstory stuff after only a few months later. This is incredible.
They're like, we're finally going to answer their questions after 61 albums. That's just numbered albums. That's not including the OAC or the Lost Episodes or Darian's Rise.
Or the Truth Chronicles. Yeah, and then they're talking to the parents at the end. Whit was in the dream. I was like, why? That's crazy.
Or do you think it was just like a guy that kind of looked like Whit and it actually wasn't him because it was like 50 years ago? So
but it was a God thing.
How would she remember that?
Because it was burned into her mind, Victoria. It was a God dream.
It's like that scene from Terminator 2. Let me talk about it in detail again.
Please don't. So, hearing Whit this vulnerable as he was after like the dream and the trauma, and he feels so bad and he's apologizing.
I felt so bad.
Hearing him that vulnerable and guilt-ridden that isn't in the past in a memory or flashback or anything is really rare, and hearing someone else be able to spiritually console him is really beautiful, and it was just like, wow.
That scene like got to me.
It was really good.
I've only heard it the one time. I tried to re-listen to the episode, but I was like, I'm not this patient.
Was it just because you were angry Jerry wasn't in it more? That's what I assumed it was.
Yeah, pretty much.
Going and dying. Wow, good job, Jerry. That's what you sound like. That's what you sound like.
More. I wanted him to be in the episode more.
I bet Whit wanted him to be in his life more. How do you think he feels?
Jeez! What's wrong with with you.
Stop peaking the audio.
Jerry hasn't been in the series for like almost 30 albums.
Jerry hasn't been alive for 40 years.
For me to want him to be in more than one scene, Devin. I hope they can hear us outside.
So, the web
got really quiet outside.
The web documentary involves the true story behind this episode, which involved even less of Jerry, believe it or not, so Victoria would have hated it.
Yeah, I would have.
We see a little ancient World Vision footage aboard the real-life Sea Sweep, and some old documentary footage about the boat people from...
What year is it?
2016.
No, what year is the Sea Sweep?
I don't know. And we hear from Vin Chung, who was the real guy whose family this story was based on. The boat portion is basically the part that was real life. It seems to be pretty spot on, except that they actually did land in Malaysia for a short while, long enough for him to talk about how horrifically they were treated while they were there. But they were eventually put back in boats, towed out into the sea and left here, which is actually worse than what happened in the episode. Before they're like, okay, we've taken you this far, we're leaving here and there. They actually let them into the country. They spent a while there, and then they put them back on boats, towed them into the ocean, and left them there like bringing whatever you do that with to get rid of whatever kind of animal. Jessie in Toy Story 2.
What?
Drive her out into the country and leave her in a cardboard box. When
somebody
loved me.
Everything
So,
was beautiful.
Also, in real life,
that scene makes me cry.
In real life, they were actually attacked by pirates twice. So yeah.
That sucks. Do you think the pirates are like, well, we got everything from this boat, time to leave, and then they see a boat like a week later, and they're like, oh, look at that big boat, and they go back, and they're like, we already took everything.
Oh,
it's you people again.
It's like an open world game.
You know what it'd be like? It would, if they did the 2 pirate attacks in the episode, it would be like Jupiter Ascending. How they just like do the wedding thing all over again right after.
That's exactly what it would be like.
Yeah, that's what I just
Good reference,
said.
Victoria.
Thank you to all those Jupiter Ascending fans out there. Eddie Redmayne, best part. Why didn't we watch that movie?
I've loved dogs. I always loved dogs.
I create life. I destroy.
There was also an animation where this girl from Sri Lanka talks about how...
That's how you spell Sri Lanka?
Yes. There was a guy...
I thought it was one word.
A guy from Sri Lanka, and he talks about his hard life and how bad things were, and then World Vision comes in and he also did some stuff. He went away to school. He worked enough to get, 2 cows. And it's like, yes, we can make it by now.
It's a hard knock life for us. This is, the 4th musical reference in under 25 minutes.
Good job, Victoria.
Thank you.
So they talked about how World Vision came in and started bolstering the healthcare and the education, and how that helps break the cycle of poverty. But specifically, he goes into the most detail about their system of microloans and their economic stuff, and how they bolstered their economy and talks about how he used the microloan system to vastly expand his small dairy farm and be able to provide for his kids that he had afterwards.
I don't like the album artwork for this episode.
Well, okay. Negative Nancy.
Yeah.
Troy doesn't like anything today.
I don't like anything. Devin made us go on the wrong bus for an hour. Then we got lost.
We weren't lost. At no point were we lost, Victoria.
We might as well have been. If we were lost, we would have found our way back faster than what we did.
So, Danny Huerta is there again, and he talks about grudges, and he gives a really bizarre speech about how releasing grudges is like stepping on ants that are chipping at your brain with a pickaxe. And that was weird. And then back to Bob, and he actually acknowledges that we don't usually get to hear Whit talk about his own failures. And I was like, yes, call them out on we need better characterization, more rounded stuff for Whit. That was so bad, I'm going to tell the camera what you said.
Oh, no!
Victoria asked if Whit considers Jana one of his failures. Because she's a terrible person. That's right. We have transparency here at the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast Incorporated.
Why did you say that? that?
Because we're transparent, Victoria.
For all
We're an
they
ethical
know,
business.
I could have said something different. They wouldn't know because I whispered it.
Obviously that's true, which is why you told us what you said, and not I could have said something different. Sneaky, you're a sneaky one, Victoria.
It was my plan all along.
The web quest stuff was pretty standard. Gives a nice breakdown of the 3 belief systems in Vietnam: Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. The latter of which isn't
that Confuciates me.
The latter of which is, of course, not a religion.
It's all uphill from here.
Which they acknowledge, but is a philosophical belief system, like a religion. So they give the total, speaking of transparency, they give the total breakdown from the OAC, which is as follows, and we mentioned some of it already. In total, it was a $5,000 gift. $2,500 went to sheep, goats, ducks, and chickens, as we detailed last time. $1,500 went to the aforementioned microloans program to support small businesses. $1,000 went to medical supplies, which is being matched and multiplied by various other governments and organizations, which then, in the end, comes out to approximately, or exactly, I guess, $12,000 worth of medical supplies. So the donation is actually valued at $16,000. This
is all from, like, the OAC funds?
Yeah.
Wow.
From this month and last month.
I didn't know that they gave this much to all the programs.
And in the fan art scrapbook, there was one called Meltzner Family Portrait and had Eugene, Katrina, and Buck in it.
Oh, I need to see it. I was talking to Devin about how I love how every time they say the Meltzner family now, they're talking about all 3 of them.
So, final thoughts.
My baby boy Buck.
I wonder what Victoria's gonna say.
I did not hate this episode.
That's a great start.
But I did not love this episode. I am kind of meh with a wiggly hand motion for this episode, which is actually Nagisa's sexuality from 50% Off. That's the quote. How they describe it. It's my favorite quote. I wish there was more Jerry.
Really?
And I really liked all the parts with Whit, both young and old. I thought they were all very well done. I still really like Scottish lady name.
Renee D. Carter.
Renee, I like her.
I can tell.
This episode was good-ish in some parts.
Wow, that was the most lackluster final thoughts you've ever given on anything.
Part 1 was so much better than part 2. I liked almost everything about part 1. I'm not a big fan of the grandma.
Binoculars.
I thought she was too over the top.
Well, trinoculars.
I liked the fan art I liked the cover art a lot from last episode. Not as much for this one. I'd probably give it a 2.7
That's the Omnidrome
out of 5 because the first part was good and all the stuff with Whit was good. Renee's great, and we got Jerry's death. And we got Jerry! We don't have enough Jerry. We need more Jerry.
The trailer is the Omnidroid from The Incredibles. On the side, see? In the camera?
I heard you the
it's
first
like,
time.
I'm gonna kill all your friends. Or I did, past tense.
I love the part when the Omnidroid starts talking in The Incredibles.
So.
It's my favorite scene.
For my final thoughts.
Hey, Dev.
Yes.
Took me forever until like this past year when I watched The Incredibles to figure out the reason why Helen was so upset was because she thought Bob was cheating on her.
Yep.
And then also they have a joke about them having all their kids, which I never caught originally. I watched it with a crowd of people on a bus for a trip, and everyone got really quiet at that part, and then you heard murmurs of, I don't remember this, across the entire bus. And it was so funny, because we all just, like, didn't know what to say, but anyway.
Anyways.
Final thoughts. What do you have to say, my brother.
I liked the episode. I will agree. I think I did like part 1 more than part 2.
Oh.
Jerry appeared in part 2, which was incredible, and we got to hear Whit talking about his past. We heard Whit's past. Oh, I'm sorry.
It was a grade A jerk.
Yeah.
Which was great.
It was great. We got to hear Whit with faults again, which we've gotten a lot of in this year since we've heard so much Whit backstory. But it's funny because every time something like that happens, someone always has to pipe up and go, oh, excuse me, you're so different now than you were back then. Or, oh, that was the old Whit.
Yeah.
They do that every time.
They do.
Which, I mean, it's true Whit wouldn't do those things back then, but it feels like they're still trying to take any bit of, like, roundness or faults Whit has in his character and sweep them under the rug to be like, yes, he's a round character because he had faults in the past before he ascended to perfection.
And then he sees Jana, he's like, get out of here!
Yeah. As Whit walks around Whit's End with his face glowing
he
like...
sees Jana, he's like, I wish Jerry was alive and you died in his place.
Wow.
I'm really tired.
Don't forget that happened. Whit walking around Whit's End with his face glowing like he just came down from Mount Sinai.
Despite what you made me sound like, I really like Jana. Unlike Whit.
So, the episode was good. Vietnam, we need to hear...
Did you just say Vietnam was good?
Yeah. I did. It's a good country, Victoria. There were good people there.
I agree with that statement.
Good. So yeah, I really like that we finally got to hear someone actually talking Vietnamese in part 2. That's always nice when we get to actually hear languages instead of just people speaking accented English. It's really too bad that
we did in Prisoners of Fear, but we were just so smart. We didn't.
That is how it works.
English.
That is how it worked. Yeah. I always forget that everything that happened in Prisoners of Fear actually happened in the Ashanti language. And
it took me a really long time to figure it out, even though they explicitly say it.
And that Eugene and Katrina learned the language, and that they learned the language so well that all of those exchanges happened with Eugene and Katrina speaking that language, not English. It's very impressive.
And Eugene is like, away, Snake, I have a pocket knife.
They might have been speaking English during that part. It's possible. It was, man, the last scene was really emotional.
It was.
It was really good. It pulled on the heartstrings. By our powers combined. I have so many flasks now, so many three-necked flasks.
In SpongeBob,
wow, they do not fit.
Become Aquaman and SpongeBob or whatever.
Yeah,
it's dusty.
Yeah, you should probably go bleach your lungs now.
That's a bad idea.
No, so is inhaling anything out of that.
Oh, now I'm worried. Oh, man. Should I drink water or will that make it worse? I'll have, like, a reaction in my stomach.
It's like lithium dust in there or something.
No.
It's just alkali residue inside.
I'm gonna die.
Like Jerry.
Oh, why?
Yeah, it was good. I was shocked, like I said, that they actually let Whit go through with that, not giving money to C-Suite, and then having to deal with the guilt of that and what could have happened.
That was my second favorite scene in the episode.
Yeah, I was impressed.
My water's way back there. I can't reach it.
So, and part 1 was really good.
Part 1 was better.
And I like that it brought us a new character who will probably never show up again, but hey, we can hope.
And a new
Renee was
kids
here.
Radio thing that
we'll definitely never hear from again.
Unless we get for Whit.
Yeah, because of course, like I said last time, it's the setup for the Imagination Station series.
Yeah.
And Renee was there, which is great, and the War Memorial. And so, yeah, it was good callbacks, and I like that. Probably the best thing for me, besides all the Jerry-related stuff that we learned and the Whit-related stuff that we learned, was
the C-Suite thing was my third favorite.
The fact that especially through the web quests and stuff, we got to talk more about the plight of refugees in all sorts of different situations, both present day and nowadays, and I'm glad that it's being acknowledged, especially when they talk about Syria specifically in the web quest stuff. Because it's obviously a big and important issue that we need to do everything we can and help. So I'm glad that it's being brought up. for the episode overall, I will give it 4.0. Yep, that is my rating. And you've given yours, correct? It was 2.7? All right, so what are we talking about next now?
Great exceptions.
Yeah, time to dig into some Dickens. Going back to the 1800s. Back when Whit was a child.
Yeah. That one line from the one episode with Olivia, hidden gems, and Whit's like, do you really think I'm that old? And I'm like, yes! You are. In fact, you might be older.
Yeah. We only have a bearing on, like, the fact that you were old enough. Well, to be fair, when Whit was coming over, which is when he was 8, coming over to America, the Titanic had already happened. That's the only bearing we have on the maximum age that he is. So at the earliest he could have possibly been born is in 1904. Which would make him, it's not October yet, so that would make him 111 years old right now.
Didn't you say that they gave him the wrong age? Oh, no, it's the next.
Yeah. Found a goof alert in the next episode, which, if you're really stretching it, you can resolve, but probably it's just a goof. But we'll talk about that in just a second. And here we are now to talk about episode 717, Great Expectations, written by Nathan Hubler and Paul McCusker, which is like the newest episode that we've ever reviewed that isn't like one that came out while we were doing the Oddcast. 727 was like where we started with Your Servant is Listening Part 1. So this is only 10 episodes before Push the Red Button.
Yep. So, you said who wrote this episode?
Yep.
Okay, so in this episode, we have everyone's favorite, Emily Jones, and she was like, hey, you know how we built up that thing about me training to want to be a judge? I changed my mind, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, yeah, it's like you're in college, just changing what you want to do all willy-nilly.
It's very relatable.
Yeah. For you, maybe, not for me. And so then Whit's like, Emily's like, well, what do? I have all these aspirations and stuff. And Whit's like, I remember when I had dreams once. Ha, ha, ha. Then I had kids. And I'm like, that's what my dad says. And yeah.
It's true.
It's true.
He says
It's
that.
true. He says that a lot. And so then Whit's like, here, these are flashbacks of every time life screwed me over. Have fun. I'm going to go cry in the corner and maybe get a pilot's license. And then we get to see flashes throughout Whit's life.
Five whole scenes of Whit's past in little snippets.
I don't think we see any of the kids, though.
Nope.
We see Jenny briefly,
Mm-hmm.
very, very briefly, but Jenny comes in, and I'm like, they have the same voice actress who played her in The Triangle in Silent Night. Yay! So,
and then,
yeah, like young Jenny. I don't think we get to hear from older Jenny at all.
Nope.
We get to hear of her, and we get a shout out. One of my favorite parts is when he does that little shout out to the Fillmore Recreation Center. He sees it at the end, he's like, I hate that place, I hope they tear it down. And I'm like, oh, Whit. Oh, you.
Just wait till your wife dies in a week.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's what happens in this episode. And Emily's like, maybe I don't have to be a judge. And Whit's like, I'm gonna fly a plane.
Also,
Yeah.
like, Joanna's in it, and she and Jack decide to leave
Jack
Odyssey.
is mentioned.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah. This was before they actually appeared, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's before Home Again.
Mm-hmm.
In a few episodes later.
And we actually got them, so this was back when we had no hope that we would actually hear their voices again.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, because Joanne talks in... Does she talk in this episode? I think she does.
She's in several scenes, that's what I'm saying.
But Jack, like Alan Young, I was like, I'm never gonna get to hear his beautiful Scottish voice ever again. And
Just
then
have to
he
replay
was in the episode like 3 episodes
Birth
later.
by Sleep.
I just have to like fall. Yeah, he's in Birth by Sleep. I just have to like fall asleep watching DuckTales. And just be like, oh, Alan Young.
So we start off the episode with Whit in a booth at Whit's End, and he has, quote, a whole lot of journals. And I'm like, that sounds to me like a whole lot of Journal of John Avery Whittaker sequels waiting to happen.
And a whole lot of Jack that we still need.
Yeah. So I did notice, like I said before, a goof alert in here, and I tried to resolve it as best as I can. You can kind of, if you stretch things.
See, I
like
thought you said they had his entire life written up, so I'm confused.
Well, I'm
why
sure
they
it's
would
little.
mess up on his birthday.
It's little details. It's not his birthday.
Oh, I thought it was. His
No,
birthday.
the goof is that in one of the video games, they mentioned Whit's birthday as being something other than October 1st.
Oh.
They also gave his birth year in that same video game as being something that would make him like 4 years old when he fought in the Battle of Guadalcanal.
That's pretty
So
impressive.
it's pretty non-canon.
Puberty hit him like a freight car.
Yeah. So in this episode, Whit tells Connie that Harold bought him his first journal when he was 8, but according to the journal of John Avery Whittaker, he received that journal from Fiona, and he was 10 at the time. I guess maybe Harold had given him a journal previously, but Whit does make it seem like his journal in the OAC is like this whole thing where he began like doing it seriously. So that is, it's possible that still works out. The real problem, scroll down to where it was. So, trying to resolve the timelines here is basically the question of, was Whit 10 or was he 11 when he began making this list with Jack? So, Whit says in this episode, in the very first youngest scene, that his parents call him John Avery, but the kids at school call him Whit, but he isn't used to it yet, which means that this happens after he met Jack when he was 10, because Jack is the one who came up with the nickname, and then right after he confirms that he says he's 10.
I still think
right
that's
now.
so cute that Jack came up with Whit.
And he mentions
Jack.
Jack. However, in Journal of Whit, he specifically mentions on October 1st, on his 11th birthday precisely, and because it was his 11th birthday, was the day that they started making the list of things that they wanted to do. And yet in this one, when he says he's 10, he says, oh, we'll add that, Jack and I will add that to our lists.
Maybe Whit just has like a really bad memory.
Either
He's like,
way,
my journal's so detailed, and it's actually a bunch of like cat scratches all over it, and it's really disorganized.
Either way, we know that it happened in that same like calendar year because he was used to being called Whit by Christmas time when his family went to visit Jack and his mom. My only thought about this is that since this seems to be just after Whit started the list, that this flashback with Emily happens, would mean it's right after his birthday, so maybe he forgot that he just turned 11, so he just autopiloted when he's like, I'm 10, when Emily called him Mr. Whittaker. Kids, though, are very touchy about their ages at that age and defending how old and mature.
I'm 9 3/4.
Exactly, they're very touchy about defending how old and mature they are, so it seems unlikely he'd make that mistake. So I'll reluctantly call this an error, with the much more parsimonious answer being that he is 11 year, and this is happening sometime between October 1st and Christmas.
Maybe he
in
feels already at that age that he's too old, so he's
1933.
actually saying that he's younger, because he's like, I'm getting too old, and it's like, you're 11, no you're not.
Yeah. With me being an old geezer like John Avery Whittaker, I can appreciate the reminiscence of the past with respect to marveling at the passage of time and all the bygone things you wanted to do, but you didn't.
You wrote a lot of journals. I just get angry when I see old journals I wrote, because it's like, oh my gosh, I have a crush on this person, bunch of hearts with their name, like around their name, and I'm like, why did I write this? And I just like rip it out, and I just like shred it.
I mean...
And like, also things that say like, there's one that made me laugh. I wrote like what year I wrote it down, and it was like 2007, and I wrote, waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3 still. And then I just left a note, and I wrote, from 2005, same year. And that made me laugh really, really hard when I read that. It's from like 2010 or something like that.
That's really funny.
But yeah, it's really funny.
The future!
The future! And I'm like, the future's not that great, kid.
So, yeah, like, reminiscing about all the things you wanted to do but you didn't, all the things you didn't expect to do but did, I can appreciate that. It certainly can be sad to mire yourself down in the mindset of what ifs and could have beens, as we learned from, what was it, Something Old, Something New? Yeah.
Yeah.
And such, but how cool is it to think about all the stuff that we did get to do instead, which is a huge part of this episode.
I got to be friends with you.
Aww. I love this episode.
No, here's the part where you say, I got to be friends.
Ditto.
Aww.
The theme of this episode is so important to me because in media so often we either rarely we'll get like really harsh realism, and most of the time on the opposite spectrum it's like, yeah, follow your dreams and you can do anything. And I love this episode, which is like, have dreams and chase those dreams, but understand sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't, and both of those are okay. And even if you don't do the things that you wanted to do, other stuff will happen, and that's good too. And you can shoot for the stars without letting those goals weigh you down if something else pans out instead, you know? Have dreams and aspire for those dreams, but also learn to be flexible and accept what God brings your way, because it's going to be great either way.
Shoot for those stars, but don't get hit by comets.
So, like Victoria, I often forget that Joanne was in this episode. This was before the big... This was
Joanne
like...
is amazing. I love her.
She's so
I was
great.
thinking... I was listening to Here Today, Gone Tomorrow last week, and then there's that scene where she's shopping with Connie, and Connie's looking at, like, the really high go-go boots. I was thinking, like, Joanne is that one mom friend, except for she's actually old enough to be your grandma. So she's like, I'm not like normal mom friends. I'm twice the age of your mom. So, yeah. Yeah,
so like we said, this episode set up the departure of Jack and Joanne, which would be made complete in Home Again, and I'll talk about that in the guide stuff at the end. It was the perfect place to do it in this episode, because then they were able to tie stuff with Jack into talking about Whit's past and their dreams and his dreams that he's fulfilling now, and then Whit goes and does that stuff, and it tied it together really well.
And we're still getting mentions of Jack and Joanne sometimes where we are, like with mention to Jason and the antique shop, which I like, because they're like, hey, they're not completely gone, we still mention them sometimes.
I never noticed this before, but it's really weird that this is the first time Emily has ever seen the new Imagination Station. Because it's been around longer than she has, and yet she's like, whoa, I've never seen this Imagination Station with doors and stuff. This doesn't look like the old one. I'm like, it's existed for longer than you have, girl.
There's that one episode with The Perfect Church. That's at the beginning of this album. That was Matthew's first time going in it.
Well, yeah, it's first time going in it, but she like never even seen it. She didn't even know there was a new Imagination Station.
Well, that's on her. That she's like, I'm too busy solving mysteries.
I'm such a good detective.
For this. And I'm like, hey, Emily, how did your latest mystery go?
So, speaking of the Imagination Station, Emily uses the character synthesis feature, which doesn't get used nearly enough on the show, even though it was introduced way back in album 23 with Sam and Rodney in the first two St. Paul episodes.
Hey, you know
it was a really long time ago.
Mentioned and great, and they never used it again.
Hand up.
I meant like mentioned only in one episode.
What?
The
Transmuter.
Actually, that's mentioned in 2, because it's in Another Man's Shoes, and it's mentioned in the Virtual Kid.
Yeah, and
but
also...
still, that doesn't count.
Lots of people think that's what Whit's inspiration was of in Malachi's message at the end, like when he gets inspiration for an invention.
He's like, I'm going to use this so much.
I know.
In one episode.
Honestly, it's the only thing I can think of that it is, because it's like the only kind of new thing Whit avails shortly after Malachi's message, but if it is, it's like, wow, what a letdown for one of the most amazing 3-parters ever, and the main character, what he got out of all of that was an invention that's only ever used once, mentioned one other time, never, and that's it.
Yeah, I really like the invention. I feel like it could have had, like, it has so much potential, but they didn't really do anything with it.
I mean, I feel like the concept of walking a mile in another man's shoes is pretty much like that's like the main thing the invention's for. So I'm sure there's other ways. What it is for. I'm sure you could come up with other things to do with it.
I mean, like, I feel like it was used tons off screen.
Yeah.
And it still might be used if it's around. We've only had like the one other mention of it. But I feel like it'd be really useful, but at the same time, it's also, like, a huge invasion of privacy for some people. So I feel like it would be super hard to get people to actually agree to do it with you. Like, could you imagine if Liz was still trying to figure out what was going on with Mandy during, like, the separation thing when Liz didn't know what was going on? She's like, hey, Mandy, can I borrow your shoes? your DNA, your shoes? Mandy's like, why?
I mean, I feel like in terms of episodes, like, the main purpose of the invention is kind of summed up in a single lesson, and that's what they did in that one. I'm sure they could come up with some creative way to put a spin on that would be different enough to make it a different episode.
What if the invention that Malachi inspired Whit to make actually took him a very long time to make?
It was the
inspiration station. It was the inspiration station, which we all know was everyone's favorite invention.
They've also appeared many times.
In a total of 3 episodes. I was going to say 2, but it's in that one OAC episode. What's it called? Happy Bus Time or whatever.
Walter's Flying Bus.
Walter's Flying Bus.
Yeah.
Happy Bus Time. I was close enough.
Happy and also sad and frightening bus time, yeah.
That episode had juxtaposition like Whiplash.
Yes, it did. So as I was listening to this episode, I kept on like cutting over to Journal of John Avery Whittaker and a bunch of other episodes about Whit's life to cross-check facts.
Like and Silent Night?
I didn't go to Silent Night, no. I was really appreciative of how much stuff Journal of Whit called back to from this episode in terms of things that Whit wanted to do. They mentioned the National Geographic thing, mentioned Whit, like things that Whit actually did, being a teacher, being a writer, being an inventor. They even had a scene in Journal of Whit about like him looking for tigers in India, which was also a line in this episode.
I thought it was cool that he wrote a screenplay. I've always wondered what happened to it. Like, I still think he should have released the movie rights. Like, heck, he knew a person who made movies, and they were willing to make a movie of Odyssey. Maybe he was, like, thinking, if the Odyssey movie goes well, I'll give him my screenplay. And then that movie came out, and he's like, never mind, I don't want him touching my screenplay.
I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of people really buzzed on the David Livingstone story this century anymore.
I don't know who David Livingstone is.
He was a famous explorer and missionary who worked in Africa.
I bet it could make for a cool OAC thing.
Maybe one day. It's weird that the draft scene where he has his draft for Whit rides a draft in this episode. His draft for the National Geographic article.
Oh,
not
draft. I thought you said draft.
No. Not the Livingston film, but the National Geographic article, the second flashback scene. It's apparently in the same house from when Whit was a kid, and yet he says he needs to call his parents. Which makes me wonder, did his parents move out of the house and he stayed in the same house? Or were they just, like, at work and Whit was just lazing around and he was going to call them both at work?
Maybe after Whit lost track of his sister that one time, they're like, that's it, we're moving out. We don't want to live with you anymore. For some reason, we're going to leave you the house.
I wonder what Fiona did then. We never know of any profession that she had. And I'm sure that most professions would change drastically if you were suddenly blinded. Because this would suggest that she wasn't.
Someone to clean their house, wasn't she? So she was a house cleaner.
She was the caretaker for them originally, right?
So she probably did that for like other places.
Good catch. I forgot about that.
Ha 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 ha! I win.
So yeah, I'm guessing it's probably the second was just lazing around the house and they're out at work. This would be taking place while Whit is studying at Duke University, because we know from Operation Dig Up that he was studying there before the war.
He was like drafted.
Exactly, he's drafted in,
which you see in the.
He's drafted in this same scene, and then after the war, he transferred from Duke to USC, the University of Southern California.
That's where Jack was, right?
No, he was at UCLA, but they're close to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, they go over that in the triangle. I don't know what I'm
So this all makes sense then if he was at Duke University before, and that's where he is now, because then it would make sense he's still living in the same house as when he was young, because they were living in Relay. Duke University is in Durham, which is only a 30-minute drive away, so that does make total sense then. It fits together really well.
Okay, I haven't listened to The Triangle in a while. Is it Jack telling Tom and Connie this story?
It's just Connie.
Or just...
It's Jack and Whit.
Jack and Whit telling Connie.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Jack
I don't know, I thought Tom was
gives
there.
the book to Whit, and then they tell Connie the story.
I couldn't remember if it was, like, in Recollections, and, like, Jack or Whit just shows up at the end, and Connie's like, "You're amazing, Mr. Whittaker," and Whit's
the way you stole Jack's girlfriend.
And then she, like, goes off to find Tom and beat him up for being so mean to Jack. Whit, so many characters.
So they moved, when they first came to America, they moved to Relay, and Harold was teaching at Duke University, which is a half-hour drive away, according to Google Maps. Only an extra 1 minute to get to Duke University itself. And Whit, we know, went to high school in Relay. We just learned from the boat people. Is confirmed, and then he started university at Duke, where his dad taught. Is still only a 30-minute commute to school, so it's not too serious. I mean, that's what Victoria's having to do right now.
Yep.
Every day.
You're like a 1 minute commute from school.
Well, except I'm working right now, which is an hour and 15-minute commute.
School. So East Wind's Raining and Operation Dig Out, that was World War II?
Yeah.
So Whit didn't fight in World War I?
No, because he wasn't born yet.
Okay. Well, at least he's not 100 years old yet. Not yet.
But pretty close.
Didn't World War I start in, like...
1914.
Oh. Or I meant World War II. That's
in
like
1939.
Okay. Yeah, the Golden 20s, and then it started, like...
And then the Great Depression, and then World War II.
Okay. 1934, is that what you said?
39.
What year was he born, supposedly?
Around 22. Because that puts him at roughly 20 years old.
So he'd be, like, 90...
We talked about this last night.
Like 94? I probably wasn't listening.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be 94 in October, in a couple weeks.
Happy birthday.
So, yeah, it makes sense what was going close by, and then the war happens. He's roughly 20, probably, when he gets drafted, and when the Battle of Guadalcanal happens in 1942, since that was a real battle. And that's where our estimate of 1922 as his birth year comes from. And then after the war, he decides to go...
After the war, he went back to New York.
Yeah. After the war, he went back to New York. He finished up his studies at the University of Southern California, and he
studied law.
He even mentions in the episode, like, this is where I hope to study after I get out of the war, confirming he wasn't at USC before the war, which does help everything line up properly.
Jack lived next door.
Yeah, with Operation Dig Out. So it is interesting to note then that according to those episodes, it was philosophy and literature he was studying at Duke University, and then journalism is what he studied at USC. So he switched.
Johnny B. Whittaker. Hillary Clinton. Yes.
As you were talking about, David Livingston film, and I did finally look it up.
We should watch it and pretend to do like an Odyssey movie review for it.
The Spencer Tracy David Livingston film is a real movie. Here's the weird thing. Whit makes it sound like he wrote his screenplay, and then afterwards when Emily mentions it to him in like the next step of his life, he's like, oh yeah, it was a great film with Spencer Tracy. It was similar to the one I wanted to make, and blah, blah, blah. Which makes it sound like the Spencer Tracy movie came out after Whit would have done his, except the Tracy film actually came out in 1939, which was 3 years before the U.S. entered the war, probably around when Whit was in...
Do you think no one told Whit? He just thought it came out in a different year, and he was like, that's so original!
There was no internet back then, you know? So the movie came out in 1939, so Whit would have been around in grade 12 at the time, probably, so this was definitely way before he was trying to submit this screenplay at USC.
It's like that thing from Frozen, and like he's going to all these different scholars, and one's like, shit, I'm gonna tell him, the other one's like, don't you dare.
Yeah, so apparently Whit didn't realize they were already making and had already released for several years before a David Livingston film that was, according to him, quite similar to the one he'd been working on. Maybe it was one of those subconscious plagiarism things. Subconscious plagiarism, yeah.
I like to think that Whit is saying that his film would have been better because it was actually a one-man show, all parts played by Whit.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
When Jenny announces that she's pregnant with Jerry, she and Whit decide to go to Del Vecchio's for dinner. And I'm like, I would like to imagine that the Del Vecchio's restaurant that they're going to, that's the same Del Vecchio who would later move to Odyssey and open a fruit stand and trick Eugene on the fruit clue during Odyssey 105's Treasure Hunt and War Games competition.
It was his grand life scheme.
Headcanon accepted. No one can have the same name without being the same person.
Could be like a child of his or something.
I mean, hey, it's the food business, you know. It makes sense. There's grounds.
Yeah, like this falling out with his son, and his son's like, I'm gonna start a competitive business, but then
a fruit stand in Odyssey.
He didn't realize how expensive it was to do that, so then he kind of like fell into debt, and he had to kind of like live on the streets for a bit. And then he found like this pear on the ground one time, and then he sold it to someone because he made it look not as old as it was, and he realized, hey, I can like get a business selling fruit in Odyssey. That's the origin story.
That's exactly how it happened.
You heard it here first on the Adventures in Odyssey
That's
Oddcast.
canon.
We just lost all our viewers.
In Whit's oldest scene, where he is just retired now, he says he's going to go watch Jason play softball, which I thought was maybe it's kind of plausible, but also seems kind of weird. Like, I was like, how old is Jason here? Because, I mean, Whit just retired, he said, like, today, which means that Recollections is just about to happen, and Whit's flop is therefore only 4 years away. Jason should...
Softball's like a code name for...
Yeah. Jason should already be an adult, probably, like, off far away from Odyssey working for the NSA. If Recollections happens in 1984, because it's the exact 4-year anniversary of when, like, Tom is telling Connie it, which that episode came out in, like, January or February of 88, then let's say Whit retired at the end of the school year in 83, because most teachers retire at the end of the school year, unless you're Mr. Slime, you ditch me in the middle of Math 11 halfway through the semester.
Not that we like to name drop or anything here.
So this would be the beginning of summer now that this is taking place, which seems consistent with, like, the ambient sound effects and stuff.
I have a question. Do you think Emily changed appearances, like, grew older in everyone else's eyes?
In everyone else's eyes. Because that's literally in the episode. She asks Whit that, and he's like, they'll see you the way they need to see you.
Okay.
So, yes, A+ reading comprehension.
Thank you. Do you... Sometimes it's awkward when you know someone who, like, used to look after you as a kid, and it just gets more awkward as time goes on. So do you think he was like, she won't know that Jason's actually too old for softball, hopefully? And he's like, yeah, I have to go to a thing. Bye.
That's exactly it, yeah. So
he's like, I just don't want to be around you.
So mathing out the timeline then. So let's say this is happening end of the school year in the summer of 83. That means it's been a little bit under 12 years since Jerry died at this point. So Jason is maybe like 22 at this point, 21 to 24, depending on how old he was in Memories of Jerry.
Give me a minute. Keep on talking.
So he's somewhere in there, like in his early 20s. So it seems odd for Jason to still be living in Odyssey. I guess it's possible he did do other stuff before joining the NSA, maybe. He says, I listened to the beginning of the first scene of What Are You Going to Do With Your Life? And Jason said that circumstances led him in certain directions towards what he would do with his life, but we don't know when that happened, if that was like immediately or if it was after trying out a few jobs before he decided to be with the NSA. So it is plausible that he could still be on an adult softball team and that Whit would go watch him play every once in a while. So I guess it works. Victoria's writing something on a sticky note with a mischievous smile on her face. That's never a good sign. To go back to the topic of dreams for the theme and stuff, when Emily's starting to be like, This is really hard, and I actually don't enjoy this. Maybe I don't want to be a judge, and Simon's super cool with it. It's really refreshing to me to have a piece of media where a parent says to their kid, and I quote, "Don't let my dream become your dream, just because it was mine." Like, it's such a cliche thing in media for kids to do the sports or do the specific university or whatever because that's what their parents did or what their parents wanted to do but couldn't, and they're, imposing their dreams onto their kid like a mini version of them. And then the kid finally breaks free of their parent, and they're like, and the parent's like, "But it's your dream." And the kid's like, "No, Dad, it's your dream." Yeah, but Simon's like, "Don't do it just because it was my dream. Live your own life." And I really appreciate that.
I like him as a character. He's a good character. He
was,
needs to be in more episodes. The last one he was in was BTV Truth, I believe.
It was good.
Don't look. Don't look at my answers.
Okay, that's acceptable.
Don't
what you're
steal
writing.
What did you think I was writing?
I don't know. Some weird note to flash the screen. That's what was last time.
What last?
Last time you spoiled something and they held up a sign that said "You're welcome."
Oh, I remember
giggling.
that.
You're having a giggle.
I remember that.
Yeah.
What's a word that starts with T? I'll put tree.
Tactics.
Oh, tactics is so much better.
I love that.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I came up with words in a different order, so this
Thanks,
probably
kids
won't make
next
any
door.
sense. But I came up with something that softball could stand for. If it's like
Do you
a
guys know
code
what an
thing.
acronym is? It's when you take the first letters from each word.
So, yeah, because no one knows what an acronym is.
Exactly. That's why secret agents use them.
There.
No one else understands them.
So top secret. So this is what Jason was at, and Whit meant to go meet him for this very important thing. Shanghai Competitive Forensics Tactics Battle American Logistics Language.
Good job, Victoria.
You can keep it if you want.
Thank you.
Put it in your giant note.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do with that.
Operation Softball.
How many words did you spell right on here?
None, probably.
Shanghai is not right.
Battle.
Linguistics
when
is
I
not
wrote
right.
battle, I forgot the L, and then I kind of wrote it in after. So, no words. I spelled American right.
Yeah, lignistics.
Tactics is spelled right.
Lignistics is not right.
Competitive
Shanghai
is right.
does not have a J in it.
I'm an English major.
Anyways, last point about the episode proper. I really love that Whit decided to become a pilot, at his old age. It just makes me really happy that he's like, hey, I can still do this because I'm going to live forever. What's age? I don't know.
I don't know
Time
why,
is an illusion.
but I was surprised when I first listened to this episode that he didn't know how to fly planes. I just thought, given the fact that he can skydive, he would kind of know, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
It's Whit.
But,
of course it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's because I was going to say,
Jason
this episode...
probably knows how to fly a plane.
This episode
Monty doesn't.
This episode did open up a lot of jokes that we made about
Oh,
Whit
yeah, when we first listened to the episode.
Now Whit can finally fly his own planes when he skydives.
Yeah, at the same time.
GTA style. He can fly the plane and then jump out of it and skydive
He can
from
push
it.
Monty out of it. Monty will be like, not again.
Grandfather,
Grandpa,
why? Oh, betrayal.
And then Dirkbags is like, still standing on the plane, and then Whit pushes him off too.
So...
And then that pilot from GRC is like, I don't know what's going on anymore.
I didn't even have a speaking role. Two things from the guide about this episode. First one, behind the scenes. Great Expectations went through several plotline changes from outline stage to final script. It was originally intended to be about Jason's return to Odyssey, with the secondary plotline revolving around Emily's disillusionment about her future goals and dreams, because those two totally connect to each other somehow.
They would probably find a way. Life finds a way.
Yeah. After several drafts, we realized that we had too much material for one story, and so we decided to remove Jason's return and move it to its own episode, see Home Again.
Jiggity jig.
And use this show to tell Emily's journey. We did, however, plant the seed of Jack and Joanne selling J&J Antiques. After many years on the show, we decided it was time for the two of them to move on from Odyssey and happily live out their retirement. Of course, one never knows when they'll pop back into town for a visit. Which I have to say, I'm very glad that they did actually do something for them, because most
Yeah.
of the time on this show, the voice actor passes away, and then it's like this character just slowly fades away as their opacity turns down to 0% into the background.
I was gonna say the same thing, but I said it in like every single episode where we've talked about voice actors passing away.
It's really nice when they actually get something to send, when they send someone off in advance and actually plan something out. And so it's funny because they did it for Whit with the Mortal Coil, and they're like, screw that, let's just use it anyways.
Last night I was listening to...
And then they had to come up with something else when he actually did. They're like, let's go on a road trip to California while we figure out what to do with Whit.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah.
Last night I was listening to Out of the Woods, and then like Polehaus comes up to Buck. And he's like, good job, Buck. And I was just imagining him going like, good job, Buck. And I was like, I want to see their friendship grow and develop, because if I can't have Leonard-Buck relationship, then I want a Polehaus-Buck relationship. I've come to the conclusion
that Polehaus is actually Leonard in one of his disguises again.
Come
back to Odyssey to watch over Eugene, and that's why he's so critical.
Super menacing because he's probably super tall. So do you think like Everett's standing on Leonard's shoulders? Except for Leonard is the face you can see. So like Leonard would be on Everett's shoulders. He's just gonna be like super tall.
That's why he's so critical of Buck, because he's like, "Are you good enough for my son?
Are you good enough for my son and daughter-in-law?"
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really glad that Jack and Joanne actually got like a proper goodbye on the show, because that's really rare.
I think that the only reason, because there's really no reason for Leonard not to come back for at least one episode, I think it's that they can't get the kid who played Everett.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, they could still have Leonard. I mean, it would be weird if Everett wasn't there.
Yeah, then they could just do what they did in New Era, and every time they're like, oh, Everett's in the car, Everett's in the hotel room. Maybe Eugene's starting to think, like, Everett just doesn't like me because I never see him anymore.
I
just want Buck and Everett to interact with each other. You need to listen to all of album 61.
Only one episode left to go.
Yep.
The one remaining thing from the guide, cut scenes. You can read this one if you want.
Okay. A brief appearance by Jenny Whittaker, yay, in front of the library, and Great Expectations was cut. What is this nonsense?
It's called cut scenes, Victoria.
I don't approve of these cut scenes. Was cut at the final playback. This scene was written to reference the scene in The Triangle, album 36, where Whit and Jenny meet at the library in University of Southern California. So would it just be like the same scene over?
I guess so, or they kind of like rewrote it at least to be like, oh hey, this is exactly when this happened, maybe, or something like that. They don't make it very clear.
I guess it's not really that necessary though. If it's something we've already heard.
Exactly.
I'm okay with that being.
Now it's not like Jenny didn't still appear in the episode. So.
Yeah. She's
like, I'm braggers.
And then Whit's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna take you out to the best like 99-cent fast food place there is.
Stand.
And then he like rips off the wallpaper, and Jenny's like, my favorite. And then
we'll split a child's diet portion mini cheeseburger.
Fiona and Howard, and on their way out, Howard. Harold on their way out, and they're like,
I thought you were gonna say Fiona's horse or something. Yeah. Let's
just
go down to
the
little place on the corner and split a child's diet portion mini cheeseburger. That's such.
Jerry
I love
inside her stomach's like, my favorite.
I love that line so much, like a child's diet portion mini cheeseburger.
That episode
and we'll
is
split
just
it.
so
We'll
good.
We'll split a child's diet portion.
Do you think it's like the size of food in fancy restaurants?
Exactly. It's just like
that
little,
big.
and you with a little knife cut it in half.
And then they like
feed
it to each other because they're really cute.
With little like one-pronged forks. This is actually just a toothpick.
Yeah.
Or a sewing needle, maybe. So yeah, Great Expectations. In terms of Whit's life-related stuff, like I said previously, this episode was such a rare gem when it came out. Because everything else we've gotten of Whit's life is like, in the timeline of Whit's life, we've got these big chunks of events that happen, and we get an entire episode or more that talks about this one. It's
really rare that we get kind of an anthology.
Exactly.
The only one we had up to this point was Silent Night.
Mm-hmm. So we get this thing, and it's like normally we get these big chunks, these big bricks that are disconnected from each other, and it's always, because Whit's done so many things with his life, it's always this really confusing thing to try and figure out how it all fits together. And this episode was so great because by nature of what this story is, which is Whit is doing one thing and suddenly, oh, now I'm doing this thing. Now, by nature of it, almost all of these 5 scenes we get from his life show what he was doing before and how that led into the next thing that he was doing. And so it becomes the mortar that is connecting the bricks, and it helps conjunct all of these different events that we had together. It helps show the order that they happened in and how one led into the other. Like before, we're like, oh, we know Whit went to Duke University and he went to USC, and there's Jenny and there was the war and stuff like that. But here we hear like, oh, he was living in his childhood home in North Carolina, and then he got drafted, and then after he was drafted, then he went to USC. That was after the war. He went back to New York.
He went back to New York.
Yeah. We get all of these things, and it actually shows us how they fit together. Like, oh, this is what Whit was doing when suddenly, Jenny was pregnant with Jerry. And we get all these things, and it shows how they fit together. And this was like one of the most important things in terms of trying to figure out Whit's timeline for knowing how all of these disconnected chunks actually cohese together, which was super huge for someone who's as nerdy about the lore as I am. It was very exciting.
Me.
Yeah.
Even though I think Silent Night's a really great episode, I feel like this episode was a lot smoother between its transitions. And
I do think Silent Night has one of the most like raw, real themes though ever on Adventures in Odyssey about like
I re-listened to that episode the other day and I was like, oh Lester, you're so pure.
But I mean, we'll talk about Silent Night soon. It's a Christmas episode,
it's
so we're doing it in December.
I think Lester's only been in 4 episodes. It feels like he's in more.
I don't know. I mean, we basically never see him.
Not like he was so good in every single episode.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Though. All his episodes are really, really good. The ending of Silent Night like always gets me so emotional, and he's like, "Here, let's do this," and then Whit gives away the violin, and I'm just like, oh, Jerry.
So those are my thoughts on like the Whit content of the episode. Like I said before, with the theme, it's fantastic. It's something you don't hear enough of. Like, yes, it's this perfect balance of yes, you can have dreams, and you should push after those dreams, chase after them, be ambitious. But also understand sometimes they don't work out, and sometimes other things come up and life changes. And it's okay if you chase after dreams, you get them. It's okay if something else comes up, because either way, God's going to lead you where he wants you to. And you're going to have amazing experiences if you're following him, no matter which way you get led. So, push after things, but be flexible and be open to what's in store and what comes along.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great, and it's, like I said, it's great that Simon is so encouraging of Emily, and that he's like, you had this dream that was my dream, but now you don't want it. It's like, okay, you don't have to do it just because I did it. And live your own life. Do you.
Odyssey's always, like, so good at taking things that are just, like, really used in, like, really popular tropes and stuff, and just, like, making them really fresh. They do that really well in
lots of stuff we've talked about
61, but those episode reviews haven't been put out yet. But, and like lots of other episodes. So I really like how they did that in this. And Simon's just great. He's great in every episode he's in, except for Baby BTV Truth. But no, that's really good in that episode. So.
When Eugene is all like trying to convince us that time is real and goes at a steady rate, and I'm like, you're the one who's all like, oh, I know about physics, trying to tell us that time is linear.
Next thing I know, the Earth
will go around the sun.
The Earth does go revolve around the sun, Eugene.
So yeah, and they brought in the Jack and Joanne stuff, which is great.
This episode was just like really smooth.
Overall, I'm going to rate 4.8.
I think that, like, I remember I know I say this all the time, but that's just because I like reflecting on my initial opinions of things. and just like how my thoughts and feelings towards them changed. So first time I listened to this episode, it was really surprising because Whit doesn't directly say you're gonna go see various points of my life. It starts, and I thought it was going to be a lot like the potential in Elliot at the beginning when we see Whit and he's young, and I thought it was just going to be like Emily following young Whit throughout the entire episode. But then it's just like bang, and I'm like, what just happened? Then we see Whit older, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And we keep on seeing like everything, and then Jenny shows up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this episode's great. And then he mentions the Fillmore Recreation Center, and I'm like, you'll learn to love it.
There's more flashbacks than I remembered. Essentially, I was like, there's what, like 3 or 4 points, right,
5?
in the past, but it's 5, yeah.
Yeah.
There is him when he's super young and he first makes the list.
Mm-hmm.
There's him when he wants to write for National Geographic, then he gets drafted. There's him at the college when he wants to make the screenplay, but then he gets the full ride scholarship for journalism. There's him when he wants to get the pilot license, but then Jenny's pregnant, and then there's him just after he retires and he's old.
The first time I listened to this episode, I was like, wow, there were so many things you wanted to do, and just, like, it was ripped away from you at the very last second. It's like a Scrat cartoon when, like, the nut's just there, and he reaches for it, and it just, like, ends up on the other side of the earth somehow.
It reminds me of the opening sequence from Up, and how they're like continually saving up money to go to Whatchamajiggy Falls.
But then
and then
Carl
they're like
breaks his leg, and then they have to like break the jar.
They have like the jar of change they're saving up, and it keeps on like going up, but then a tree goes through the roof, and then it's filling up, and then the car gets a flat, and it's filling up, and then he breaks his leg, and just showing how like, oh, they're doing it, but you know, unexpected costs and things come up all the time, and they get in the way and they cost things, and the next thing you know, you're really old, and then your wife is dead. Which,
and honestly, the first time I saw Up, it was like really making me think of Recollections, and because just like the whole thing with Jenny like passing away reminded me of Ellie.
It's like the most devastating non-verbal scene in any movie ever made.
It is. I think people still consider it to be like the most powerful scene Pixar's ever created.
Yeah.
And how can you not cry when watching that scene?
So what's your rating on this episode, Victoria?
4.3, I believe.
All right.
I think that's a fair
Hokey
rating.
day. So, Victoria, do you remember what we're doing next time?
No. At least I'm honest about it.
We are going to do our next lore episode.
Oh, we're doing Tom's lore.
Yeah, Thomas Riley Jr.
Tom the Tim Tam Man Davis.
Riley, yeah.
That's his full name.
Yeah, just like they use in court in Novacon. So yeah, we're going to be doing the lore for Thomas Riley Jr. That'll be next time. There's more than it seems like there would be, I think, and I'm going to have a lot of episodes to listen to in the next week to write this, because his stuff
feels like there would be a lot.
His stuff is pretty thinly spread out, though. Most of it is like little one-line snippets spread out across a lot of episodes. There are very few episodes that actually...
See, when it comes time for you to write Wooten's lore, I'll feel so bad for you. That will be the hardest, in my opinion.
This is why I wish I had the time to script out every single episode so I could just search the text. It would make my life so much easier at every moment.
Out of all the main characters, so by main characters I mean Connie, Whit, Eugene, Bernard, Tom, Wooten, and Penny.
Jack,
and Katrina. I feel like Bernard and Katrina would probably be like the two easiest to do lores for.
Just because their history is so condensed?
Yeah. Like,
I mean, granted, Bernard's family can be a bit confusing stuff.
I mean, Bernard's stuff is pretty condensed, though, in episodes. Like, you have prequels of love, and you don't really need to worry about Between You and Me, because that's all in prequels of love.
Yeah.
And then you have My Fair Bernard.
I was born.
Have fun interpreting.
Bernard Walton was born a pauper to a pawn with a squeegee in his hand.
Can that actually be the entire lore video from Bernard?
It is canon that Bernard came out of the womb with a squeegee in his hand.
And the doctors are like, this is really weird.
It was terrifying.
This is the first time it's happened, I swear.
There's still medical textbooks to this day who have like little sidebar case story bits about Bernard Walton.
They're like, true story or fake? And all the kids are like, fake? And they're like, true, actually. We still don't understand what happened.
No one knows what happened to him. And then one kid like looks out the window into the hallway of the school, and Bernard's just there mopping the floor.
And then they're like,
so that's all for today. We'll talk about Tom's lore next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And I'm wearing a Nirvana shirt. No, wait. I've never actually listened to any Nirvana.
And remember, kids, Shanhaji Competitive Forensics Tactics Battle American Linguistics Language. Goodbye.
Can that be our motto for the Oddcast?
Goodbye.
It sounds like Latin or something like that.